Good evening. Good evening, everyone. All right, good evening. Well, if you've made it into this room, you've passed the first test, all right? We didn't know we were on 2 grids until tonight, so congratulations. Can I offer a word of thanks to our agencies and those who offered tables and services and who sat in the non-AC'd room for a good long while and talked and answered all your questions. Can we give them a round of applause? They are doing good work, and they did the good work tonight in fading light. And who knew that going to the bathroom holding a flashlight was a skill that you needed to know in this world, you know? So, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Forum on Homelessness. My name is David Killingsworth. I'm one of the 2 pastors here at First United Methodist Church of Sanford. The other pastor, Megan, is somewhere in the sky between Charlotte and Orlando. The storms didn't just affect the power, they affected a lot of flight schedules, and she is so bummed not to be here and wishes she could, and you are stuck with me instead. But we are just so beyond honored to host this very, very important conversation, and we're delighted that you took time out of your busy schedule to be here. One of my heroes is Brian Stevenson, who runs the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, and one of the things that he talks about a lot is the power of proximity. He said, if you're going to know an issue, you've got to get close. You got to get close to it. You can't learn from afar. And one of the advantages and one of the great gifts that I always tell people about this church is the power of its proximity to those who are going through it. Many of our friends in the park, folks who have lived on our steps, folks who come to church, they're struggling with homelessness, they're struggling with insecure housing, they're struggling with high rent costs, and some of us are all nodding our heads because we know folks that are going through that as well. There's a power in proximity, and I've been surprised over and over again how many agencies and other churches come to us and say, hey, we've got tools, we've got resources, we've got the passion, but we don't know where to go. We don't know where to find folks who are struggling, and it seems like you do. And I never thought of that as a gift, but it's truly a gift because we know that through the power of proximity, you get to know other people's stories. There's a tendency to think of homelessness as sort of an out there issue, right? It's across to the other side of town. It's in the other part of the zip code. It's somewhere else. But friends, it's right here, and it's right now. One of the observations that we've observed in this post-pandemic landscape as we've offered services on our campus like food distribution with other agencies in our area, we've noticed that there's been a shifting dynamic of those who are showing up and darkening our doors for services. And it's a new demographic that maybe has never applied for services before, never needed vouchers before, never needed food before. Pastor Megan noted last week when she was at food distribution that almost the entire group that came was senior citizens. We've not seen that trend until recently. So we know, I think this is a wonderfully and appropriately titled forum, the new faces of homelessness. This is a nuanced issue, this is a shifting issue, and I think we are required to have a nuanced and a shifting conversation, and I'm so grateful for each of you coming from the respective bodies and agencies that you're coming from to be here and to engage in that conversation. One last voice that I want to bring in is Dr. Ruby Payne. She wrote a framework for understanding poverty. And she said that any situation, any complex and nuanced situation like poverty, and we can put homelessness in that category too, these big complex situations, we know that there are challenges and shortfalls on an individual, a community, a systems, and an institutional basis. There are reasons and pitfalls for poverty at every level of that tier. And so she says any reasonable solution would include responses that are individual, community, systems, and institutions. And we've got those represented in the room tonight, which is so exciting that we can have this conversation in a robust way to come up with these complex solutions to these big issues that are facing and affecting our neighbors and affecting our neighborhoods. So again, welcome. We are delighted that you're here. I hope that you found the bathrooms at this point, even in the dark. But they are there on the other side of our campus here if you need those. And if you've got any questions about any of the work that we might be doing, I'd love to answer those questions as we go forth. It's now my privilege to introduce the League of Women Voters President, Jerry Wright, and she's going to offer more context for our time tonight and introduce our panel speakers.
Good evening. I'd like to say thank you for being here tonight. And I'd like to thank Pastor David and Pastor Megan for inviting us to be in their home with us tonight for this topic on homelessness. And as he said, it's indeed a topic of our times. First of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. We are a league of women that vote, and we encourage voting, and that's our one of our number one issues, voting and education. But we also are a nonpartisan organization, and we do bring forth issues that are of interest to the community. And tonight is one of those interests, the interest of homelessness. And we also have had several other topics as well. We've had trafficking, human trafficking. We've had gun safety. We've had a lot of other issues of importance to our community, as well as forums on voting. So tonight's issue is a new face of homelessness, and we're again excited to be here with you tonight. We have questions are to be submitted on index cards, and the index cards will be distributed out. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. And I'd like to introduce the panel tonight. Pastor Megan, as Pastor David said, won't be here because she's in the air. She's flying somewhere. She's somewhere flying. And in her place, we have Chris. Chris Ham was selected as the executive director of the Rescue Outreach Mission of Sanford, Florida, and on January of 2022. He is the Seminole County's only homeless emergency shelter. The Rescue Outreach Mission is the only emergency shelter in Seminole County. Chris is a native of Winter Park, Florida. He's a graduate of Florida State University and Columbia Theological Seminary. Chris has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 2 decades as a Presbyterian minister, pastor, and for nonprofit agencies in the human services area. He's a graduate of both Leadership Seminole Class 30, and Leadership Orlando Class 101. The occasional diner, Chris has completed numerous let's see, I can't see. I'm sorry, occasional runner and he's done one full marathon in his free time. That's Chris Ham. Okay, now Megan is not here. I could share some information with you on her, but I'll just move on to Jillian. Where's Jillian? Okay. Jillian, I used to work for Seminole County Public Schools, but I've heard a lot about you and what you do in your role in Seminole County Public Schools. A lot of hard work, and I know it is. Jillian manages the Seminole County Public Schools Families in Need program. In this role, she serves as the district's liaison for homelessness, and she foster care students and families, as well as working with staff and administration to meet student needs. Jillian also works to build community partnerships to support student success, and that's Jillian. We also have Trevor Fraser. Trevor is a real estate and housing reporter for the Orlando Sentinel. He has lived in Orlando for over 20 years and worked in Central Florida journalism for 19. In 2014, he received his master's degree in city planning from Rollins College with a focus on sustainable urban design. And our moderator tonight used to be my pastor. Dr. Hunter is a familiar presence in Seminole County, and everybody knows him. He's served as the founder and the first pastor of Northland Church for over 32 years. He has served in many community and national roles, such as the chairman of the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness. He is now the faith-based president of the Parable Foundation, dedicated to increasing empathy, understanding, and empowerment for marginalized communities. And again, here is our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled with being able to moderate this panel tonight, because you're going to get a different perspective from each one of them. And thank you, Chris, for filling in for Megan. I know she's frustrated because she can't be here, and you've got to come back and hear her sometime. She's just absolutely wonderful. But Chris has the kind of excuse me, leadership that directly deals with the population that we're talking about here. Let me just kind of couch this or frame this discussion, and then I'm going to go to you, Trevor. When I was the chairman of the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness, there was a shift then. It used to be that homelessness was just dealt with, especially by government agencies. Only chronically homeless people were really supported and paid attention to, given resources to. Chronic homelessness being defined as those with some sort of disability, whether it be physical, mental, drug disability. But since that time, and through the work of the commission, the government is now paying attention to the precariously housed, those who are right on the edge of, and they don't really have a home per se. They couch surf, they're making do, and the slightest reverberation is going to throw them on the streets. I give you that background to say, whereas the government is an indispensable component of the solution to homelessness, the real solution is sitting here in this sanctuary tonight. This is a community challenge. This is for people who know people who live by them or have friends, or so you're exactly who we want to be in the room. And the goal here would be, A, that you would know more accurately the picture of homelessness through the data that will be shared by all of our panelists. B, that you would know more personally a picture of the people that are going through this. Each one of these will be able to tell you about somebody they know, so that you'll be able to develop a heart for them. That's key. This isn't just a problem to be solved. These are people to be helped. And these are our neighbors. So without further ado, let me go to Trevor. Trevor, speaking of accurate information, this guy's a fountain of accurate information. So let me begin with this question. Tell us, I'm going to go to each panel member and ask this question. Tell us from your perspective, give us the data that you know about that kind of presents an accurate picture of the challenge of homelessness in Central Florida.
Okay. Well, first of all, are we hearing me through this, or are you hearing me? Is everybody hearing me? Okay, great. All right. I also want to clarify, I'm one of those burbling water fountains of accurate knowledge. It's very low, and you got to put your mouth all the way on it. It's very bad. But I think, so I've been covering the housing market for the last 2 years here, which have been 2 very interesting years in the housing market in Central Florida. And I think one of the things when we talk about the idea of the edge, and people being on the edge, one of the things that is happening is that we have had an unprecedented, what am I talking about? Every profession who works in real estate, whether you're talking about realtors, investors, people who build multifamily, developers, whatever, all of them will say that the conditions that we have had in the last 2 years have been entirely unprecedented in terms of the way that housing prices and so forth have shot up. So let's first look at rents, because a lot of the people that we're talking about are people who are renters and who are essentially just one, rise of the price and rent from being out there. So currently in Metro Orlando, anybody know just offhand the average or the median rent right now in the Metro Orlando area? Any guess? All right, it is not say it is now $18.10 a month is the Metro Orlando. Now Metro Orlando is a statistical area that encompasses Seminole County, Orange County, Osceola County, some of Lake, some of Volusia. But $18.10 a month. Now, if you're talking about Orlando proper, that's $19.80, and if you're talking about Seminole County, it is $17.46. So $17.46 a month. That is, it represents on average about a $380 increase over the last year. I'm sorry, that's since the beginning of the pandemic. Orlando, Metro Orlando, last month was found to have had the highest year-over-year rent increase in the country. So you again aren't crazy in thinking like, boy, things are going up around here. They are going up around here, very specifically. Yes, they're going up everywhere, but they are going up a lot around here. But that's, of course, the rental rate if you can find a place. The vacancy rate in Metro Orlando is 5.5%, which is about the same for Seminole County on the whole. But of course, when you drill down, when you then start looking at apartments by tiers, most data trackers, track them by tiers. So you have your tier 1 apartments, which are your luxury apartments, your B, class B apartments, your class C apartments. Well, class C apartments, which are typically your workforce housing, we have a vacancy rate in Seminole of about 2.9%. So very little available, and that, the average rate for, again, the lowest tier in Seminole County is $14.75. That is the median monthly rent right now for the lowest tier of rent. So I've been talking to people over the last 2 years just who are at a loss. These are people of all ages, people of all incomes, people of all jobs. I mean, I met people, who make 6 figures a year and are being forced out of the apartment that they've been in for the last year because they're like, I really cannot afford to stay here. So it is a growing concern. This is reflected in a couple different other data points. We know that.
Trevor, before you go there, can you tell us?
Sure.
Is this because of the population, the growth in the population of Central Florida? Is this because, we just have not built fast enough? Tell us why those prices are going up.
These are happening. So, first let's talk about population growth in the area. Yes. We have had an explosion of population over the last 2 years. You may have heard of the phenomenon of people up north, once they were sent to work from home, realized, hey, I don't have to live in the north anymore, and decided to move down here. Well, a lot of them are moving to Central Florida. We are taking on about 1,000 people a week in the region. Interestingly, Orange County's population actually dipped very slightly by sort of rough estimates from last year, while all the surrounding counties went up more significantly, largely because Orange County's prices obviously went up a little higher than others, and it became, it actually was moving people from Orange County out to the outlying areas. So yes, demand is high, and anyone that you talk to in real estate is going to tell you that. Demand is very high. The other thing is our inventory is very low, our housing inventory. The housing inventory for sale over the last year has hit record lows, and we have about what is known as a month's supply. That doesn't really mean much to you except to say that a 6-month supply is considered a balanced market. And pretty much every real estate agent I've ever talked to has said that they've never seen it get down like that, never ever seen it just drop this low in particular. Part of that has to do with the fact that we didn't build enough over the last 10 years. After the recession of 2008, builders were hesitant to build new projects, and so we spent about 5 years not building anything. Once it resumed, we were behind. We are now, it's hard to put a number on it. There are people who say we're 50,000 units behind, people who say we're 20,000 units behind. Either way, we haven't built enough housing over the last few years. And I think that's about the best summary that I can give of what we have. We have very, very high prices. Again, rent has gone up 18% year over year. We've had housing prices have gone up 24%. They have tripled since 10 years ago. Just so you know, the median home price in Orlando is now $380,000. 10 years ago, it was $125,000. So it has more than tripled in the last 10 years, and about 100,000 of that happened in the last year. So something to be aware of.
Thank you. That's depressing, but needed information. Jillian, I want to come to you because this is really impacting Seminole County Schools. You are the person at Seminole County Schools that deals directly in this area. Can you, first of all, tell us about the increase in homeless kids, and define homeless kids according to the McKinley-Vento definition. What kids are counted as homeless, and tell us something about them. Give us a picture of them.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. I see many familiar faces from partner agencies, so I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for taking the time to, learn about this issue. And so within the Families in Need program, we are the Homeless and Foster Care Education Program. So we are really seeing the issue firsthand in all of our schools. And how I'd like to frame, I guess, our view of Seminole County Public Schools and students in homeless situations is that every one of our schools, all 67 schools in our district, have at least one student in a homeless situation. Everywhere from Heathrow Elementary, Sable Point Elementary, Oviedo High School, Haggerty High School, some of our schools that we think of as, these are high-income areas, Haggerty High School having many professors who live in the area from UCF. Every single school has at least one student experiencing homelessness. I'll go into the numbers in a moment just because I think that also shares kind of where we're at. But as Dr. Hunter mentioned, we work under federal legislation called the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. So you may have heard of McKinney-Vento program in Orange County. We're the same. We're just called Families in Need, or FIN. So what McKinney-Vento does is it identifies students in homeless situations in a very specific way. So the different types of homelessness under McKinney-Vento are shared housing, hotel motel, vehicle camper or tent, in a shelter, I don't know if I said that one already, and then also our unaccompanied homeless youth. And I'll give you a bit of an idea what all those look like. So shared housing is our families who are living with someone due to economic hardship, families fleeing domestic violence, families being evicted from their home, not able to afford their rent, families fleeing from other countries, Venezuela, Ukraine, fleeing violence in their country and just coming here unexpectedly living with someone. So we're saying shared housing because they have nowhere else to be. That is our largest category, and that qualifier actually differentiates us from the HUD definition of homeless. So we have families doubled up. That's what we call it in our district, is doubled up. We also have families living in hotels and motels. I'm sure you all have driven up and down 1792 and seen Lake Ferry Motel, Budget Inn, Hometown Studios, even hotels in Altamont Springs and Oviedo, even right off University we have hotels. So every single one of our schools also has a family living in a hotel or motel. Of course, this is them living there due to not having other accommodations to live at. I've been hearing recently, families' rents are going up. They're even planning to go into extended stays hotels. They're saying, Jillian, I know in the end of the month, I'm not gonna be able to stay where I'm at. I don't wanna get evicted, so I'm gonna leave amicably, but I'm gonna go to the extended stay on Greenwood Boulevard over in Lake Mary. We also have families, which of course Chris will speak on, in Rescue Outreach Mission and Safe House, our domestic violence shelter. And then unfortunately, we do have families living in their vehicles. So like I said, every one of our schools has families in all those situations and at least one student in these homeless circumstances. Just to give you an idea of what we're seeing, and I'll speak on a specific student case, of course, with unidentifiable information, but we are seeing an increase in what we call unaccompanied homeless youth. So those are students who are not in the physical custody of a parent or legal guardian. They're essentially on their own. They could be 15 years old, 16 years old. They could even be 14, not staying with a stable individual, a stable adult, because their parent is maybe incarcerated, their parent is staying in the car. So our unaccompanied homeless youth, that is a population that is growing exponentially during this current crisis. I'll tell you, last year we had 268 students that were identified as unaccompanied homeless youth. And so I'll speak on one specifically. This was a student we had at Seminole High School. She was living with her family. They were in an unstable situation as a family unit, but it got much worse when the family kicked her out. At that time, she did understand that she was pregnant. She was a senior, like I said, still trying to access her education, still trying to, make it in the world. And so with, of course, the support from Chris's organization, we were able to assist her in getting into Rescue Outreach Mission. But, let's just think about what that's like for a senior in high school, already nervous and scared about having a baby on the way and living in a shelter. So through the support of Rescue Outreach Mission, through the support of the school social worker, who is wonderful, Mr. Tim Tucker, and the support of our Families in Need program, we were providing that ongoing assistance, that adult support that she was lacking because she was completely on her own. And this student, which does have a happy ending. She did successfully graduate this past May. She walked across the stage with her peers. She was able to secure stable housing for herself and her upcoming baby. And she is in community college now, so she's accessing her education at a higher level. We always tell our students that your education is something that no one can take away from you. And as long as you have, the ability to access education, to get your diploma, to get to that next stage, no one can stop you. No one can take that away from you. So that was one of our students, recently having been on her own. But I'll share one short other story about a family who's currently in our district. I actually just met her at a back to school event that happened at Action Church recently over in Sanford area. And she came up to me. She was actually a volunteer herself. She was part of their committee, with the red shirts on, making sure families knew where to go. And she said, can I talk to you because I'm actually in your program. I'm in the FIN program. And I said, I'd love to meet you. Maybe we've actually spoken and I don't know face to face what you look like. What she shared with me is that her rent was going up. She was going to have to leave the apartment. And so she just was scrambling. She didn't know where they were going to go. And she said, I had a friend that was willing to take us in. But the friend told her, I'm not taking in a grown man. Your husband is not staying at my house. So you and your daughter can stay with me, but I don't really care. Your grown man, your husband who's working, he can't stay at my house. That's inappropriate. So her and her younger daughter were staying at a friend's house, husband sleeping in the vehicle, and not only that, she also had an older daughter who was staying at a cheerleading coach's house. This cheerleading coach essentially brought her in. Mind you, this is now an unaccompanied homeless youth, not staying with a parent or legal guardian. She's offered her a lot of trips and a lot of access to the community and to various things, but they're still separated. It's still a family that's now separated. And the mother told me, she said, Miss Jillian, I'm having anxiety attacks. I'm facing depression right now. She said, because I'm separated from my daughter and I'm separated from my husband. And so, just the thought of even her youngest daughter who is with her, not getting to see her older sister, not getting to see her dad every day, and still having to go to school every day and try to learn, just the thought of that and just that separation and how it's not only affecting the parents, but definitely the students. And also, the older student maybe feeling like, I'm getting this great experience. I am housed, kind of stably, but I'm not with my family. I hope they're safe. I touch base with them, but, just being separated. So just to end my little spiel, just numbers. Of course, the numbers are where everything, that's funding, that just gives us a picture. So in the 2021 academic year, so not the one we just had, but the one before, we had 1,400 students experiencing homelessness. This past year that we just ended, 1,963. Over 500 students now identified in this situation. And like I said, within that 1,963, 268 were unaccompanied homeless youth, without a parent or legal guardian. That's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you. That was really, again, heartbreaking, and I know you're also going, what can we do? We'll get there. We'll get there. But I want to ask Chris now. Chris has a really special place of leadership in our county because, as Jerry said, he's running the only housing possibility for those who are homeless. So, but Chris, if you could just tell us what you see every day, what the population that comes to you looks like, kind of what their problems look like. Just tell us about what you do.
Thanks, Dr. Hunter, and thank you for allowing me to be here. I actually came from a board meeting, so I have to remember to take a photo so I prove to them I'm actually here and not skipping my board meeting. I was on it in the car. But just a quick background. Rescue Outreach Mission was founded in 1967. We're the only homeless emergency shelter. We're located in historic Goldsboro. We manage 115 beds in 2 buildings. We have a building for single men with 3 dorm rooms, and we can host upwards of 50 or 60 men that are single in those 3 dorm rooms. And then we have a women and family building, and we can host another 50 single women. And then we have 8 family rooms. And so we're able to host upwards of 115. As far as trends go, it's, Jillian, that was one of 2 high school seniors she mentioned. We actually had another high school senior that stayed with us. He was a student at Seminole High School in the International Baccalaureate program, working 2 jobs, and was removed from his house by his family because he identified as gay. And so we took him in, and can you imagine an IB student living in a shelter next to men, some of them experiencing mental health illness, some of them experiencing drug violence, issues with drugs, and he was also working 2 jobs. He's got a full ride. He's doing fantastic. We got him helped out. We got him a place, and now he's got a full ride, and he's doing fantastic. And I didn't do none of that. It's really, for us, it's our case management, which I'll talk about in a minute. But as far as trends go, we see a cross spectrum. We have pregnant women in our shelter tonight. We have mothers with young children. We have single fathers with children. We have single men. We have single women, many with different situations. We are what's called a housing first shelter. You've probably heard that phrase. Our whole singular focus is getting people into housing. And so what we do is we welcome folks in. They're not residents, they're guests of ours. We allow them for an initial 30-day stay. We provide meals. This year alone, today, we're about 42,000 meals that my team has provided since January 1st. We've had over 343 guests. But most importantly, what we've done is we bring them in and we work with them, and we have a team of case managers. My case managers are the real secret sauce. These are my coaches. One of the things that we've done, when I started in January, a quick side note, we had 7 employees. When I started, I was number 7. Today, I've got 23 as of tonight. I've really brought up my staff a lot, and a lot of his case management. If you met Christine Schaefer, she's my director of programs and case management in the back. She's the hero. It's not me. She should be up here. But what we've done with case management, we also offer case management 7 days a week. I have a case manager in every Saturday, every Sunday, and 2 nights a week. Because we think the case management is the secret sauce. It's that coaching coming alongside and sitting down one-on-one. When a guest checks in within 72 hours, hopefully, they've met with a case manager to come up with a plan, to sit down and talk about and say, okay, Joel, so now that you're homeless, you're experiencing this, what's your goal? We think your goal needs to be housing, and so what can we do to come alongside? We don't do it for you. We want to equip and empower you to be able to make that difference. And this year, last year in 2021, we were able to successfully house about 70 individuals. As of today, we're at about 101. Christine's waving to me. So she's been able to get 101 guests into housing that's permanent. And we define permanent housing not necessarily as a hotel, but it's a shared. We're getting a lot of shared apartments. We're seeing a lot of pad splits for single men or for single women, or folks coming together. And we're really singularly aggressive in that mode of coming alongside. A couple things that I believe strongly in is dignity, compassion, and respect. And we treat everybody as a child of God. My background is a Presbyterian pastor for almost 2 decades. So I think everybody's a child of God. But we treat everybody as equals and welcome. We come in and help them out. Trends I'm really seeing right now, I was just talking with one of our county judges, and he shared with me, he said, be prepared. He's got 8 or 10 evictions coming down the pipe every week. They're starting to come back with the evictions are starting on the rise. We were seeing, and we had a COVID outbreak a couple times, 40 or 50 guests per night. I've got, just as a frame of reference, tonight I have 81 guests in our shelter. I have 15 children under the age of 18. I have 6 families. I have 40 single men, and then we have about 38 women right now. So those are some of the numbers we're seeing. We're seeing the trends come up, and we think it's going to continue to rise over the next couple months.
That's remarkable. I mean, that's I'm sitting here. I knew Mother Weaver. You know, Mother Weaver was
Yep.
the founder. We've gone from one type of pastor to another type of pastor, but she would be so pleased at this, Chris.
Thank you.
And she was a powerhouse. I mean, she was
Oh.
a force to be reckoned with. But I never knew very many people that could love like Mother Weaver, you know, and it was just, so I'm thrilled to see, to hear what's happening right now. I want to come back to you, Trevor. Central Florida is kind of a unique community. And I'm sure there are areas of hope, and there are areas of, there are obstacles in Central Florida that other parts of the country probably don't have. I do a lot of traveling, as I'm sure you do, and we go into other cities. There's these huge homeless encampments that are just devastating to see. Orlando doesn't have those.
No.
Yet we do have a lot of people living in woods, and we've got a lot of people who want to help and want to build, but a lot of people are saying, not in my backyard. So tell us kind of the unique challenges of Central Florida.
Well, one of the first is going to be land and building in general. Land in Central Florida is another thing that has just spiraled in price over the last decade, but certainly in the last couple of years. I spoke to some developers recently about challenges to building affordable housing, and one of the things that always sticks with me is, if any of you know Craig Usler, who built Creative Village in Orlando, if you're familiar with Creative Village over there near downtown, and that has one affordable housing apartment in it now with about 240 units, and there's another apartment building coming with about, I think, 150 units. And he's like, oh, that's a drop in the bucket, which it is. Again, it's one of the, I mean, for the need, it is not anywhere close. But one of the things that he said to me is the largest challenge to building affordable housing is you haven't found a way to make it obscenely profitable. And I think about that a lot. And he says that he always says the word obscenely facetiously, but to get the point across that you can't just say that the math on this works out. It has to make someone rich or they're not going to do it. And so there's a real issue on that. One thing that they ask for, of course, is help from the government, and so on. In Florida, we have the Sadowski Fund, if I can bring that up. Sure. So in Florida, we have what is called the Sadowski Fund. The Sadowski Fund is supposed to help with rental assistance and housing placement. It was created in 1992. It's paid for by document stamps from housing sales. And to date, the legislature has taken about $2.3 billion out of that fund. We typically, we've gone years where they've just raided the entire fund. In the last year, they promised never to touch it again, except that they were going to cut it in half. But that we would get that 50%, and that 50% was going to be $153 million over the next year. But then they promised $100 million to a program called the Hometown Heroes Program, which, if you don't know, is a thing that's going to be providing, or it does not exist yet, but the plan is to provide certain first responders with down payment assistance. But that's $100 million out of the Sadowski Fund for rental assistance, for anything else. We do have a program, it is just not well funded. Yeah, well, I would say that the biggest challenges are just trying to get the land and the people to invest in it.
Could I just ask you a follow-up question here, and then I'm going to come to Jillian. I'm going to ask you to describe some of the special efforts that we might be able to make to help students in school. I'm looking at Dee Dee Schaffner out there. Dee used to be the chairman of the Seminole County School Board, and when after that 60 Minutes segment came years ago, describing that family living in a van, Dee Dee and I and Brenda Carey of the commission just decided we were going to see to it that there was a a food distribution place in every one of these schools so that the kids they'd have at least something to take home on the weekends. So there are ways that we can involve the community, and there are also, we have very helpful agencies dotting the congregation, I'm a preacher, the group tonight with the sharing center here, and there are just ways that we can all participate more than we have in specific ways. But I digress. At the turn of the last century, many significant corporations or industries had workforce housing, and I just want to know: is there much? I know I've heard Universal is kind of going down that direction. Is there any hope that the largest employers, Disney, maybe Florida Hospital, other corporations, might think about housing some of their workers?
And I'm going to say that specifically has happened. In fact, with the particular companies that you mentioned, Universal and Disney are currently building apartments right now that are meant to be affordable housing. I think between the two of them, it's going to be about 500 units, and I don't quote me on that because I could be wrong, but I think that's what it comes out to. But they're each building workforce housing, and this is workforce housing. This is for people, who work for them is specifically what they're trying to get. Of course, they also pay some of the lowest wages in the county, and so a lot of the people who work for them are the people struggling to find housing, so that's a good move. Florida, I always want to call it Florida Hospital. Advent Health, I know is working on, at least around their main downtown campus, the one over by Lake Ivanhoe there. They have a plan to build several apartment buildings and so on that will be workforce housing for them. I don't know where they are on construction of that, but I know that is something that they have. And that is an old, like you're saying, that's just an old industrial sort of remedy to this. One of the issues that we have faced is that as industries have become more spread out and franchised and so on. So when you have a lot of people working in service, but not necessarily for any one company, there is no entity to build the workforce housing for your waiters at Olive Garden, your workers in fast food, and so on and so forth. But that is one of the things that some of the companies taken on.
Jillian, sorry, Jillian. Tell us about, again, some obstacles and solutions that we could begin to wrap our minds around.
Sure. Yeah.
What can we do as a community?
Absolutely. So I will give some additional good news. I'm not sure if you all did see that 60 Minutes, and hi, Ms. Schaffner, nice to see you, celebrity here. But the young lady that was in the van in that situation, I actually was a part of a Stetson University hosted a recent online conference regarding homelessness, and she was one of the speakers. She was one of the guest speakers. And so I have an update, and I thanked her profusely. Thank you so much for everything you've done for our district to raise awareness. While it may have seemed to give a lot of info about her family, she really opened up the doors for the FIT program, which is now the FIN program, which I'm, manage. And so I just said, thank you so much for everything you did. So she's a graduate of Stetson University. She's married. She's been adopted. Years back, she was adopted into a loving family, and she's actually now married. She lives in Georgia, and I believe she's pursuing law school. So it's just so wonderful that through such hardship, she's facing such beautiful future. So a little bit about what our Families in Need program does, how possibly you can get involved, and really it's just about knowing, being, I guess, a navigator for some of the families that you might come across, because whether it be a neighbor, whether it be just someone you meet in the grocery store, just knowing what's out there to be able to put them on the right track, to know that their students can still access their education. So a little bit about the Families in Need program. Our goal is to remove barriers for students who are in varying housing circumstances. And how do we do that? Of course, what I will firstly let you know is you might talk to someone who says, okay, I'm new to the area, we're staying in our vehicle, how do I get my student enrolled? I don't have an address. And as you know, we're crazy about zoning here in Seminole County. Oh, you live here, you're going to Castleberry, you live here, you can't go to Bear Lake Elementary. So if a family is in a homeless situation, with our support from the Families in Need program, we can get them into school. We have the tools to make sure that they meet the residency requirements, and not only that, we can get them enrolled even if they don't have updated shots, even if they don't have a copy of their birth certificate. This is all within McKinney-Vento. So that's huge, is just removing the barriers so students can get into school, because really that's going to open doors, them accessing school.
Is there a number that's available that everybody could, if they're talking with somebody, if they hear somebody, who would they call
Yes.
in order to
Absolutely.
see if there's some assistance?
Yes, absolutely. So if you happen to be wherever you're at church, at the grocery store, you can tell them Families in Need, FIN. It's 407-320-2025. But we have tried, I'll say that again, 407-320-2025. We've also tried to really increase our online presence as well as our outreach in the community in English and in Spanish, and hopefully soon of other languages when I can get some Haitian Creole speakers on our team. But we have all of our forms in English and Spanish. So that's just really sometimes a concern of families. Within that, though, is also not only for new enrollments, but say a family's living in, I don't know, Oviedo area, and they can't pay the increased rent, and they're like, I'm gonna have to leave my home, I'm gonna have to go stay with my friend, and she lives all the way in Altamont area. But my student is in 10th grade, he loves Oviedo High School, he cannot fathom the thought of leaving his friends. That's where we step in. The student does not have to leave their school. They can stay at the school, we can get them bus transportation set up, and so we can make sure there's that stability. So really just making sure their rights under the law are maintained is the biggest thing within our program. But then secondary to that, of course, we have academic supports, getting students ready for school supplies, clothing, shoes, just make sure they feel safe and normal at school. And then also social emotional. Like I mentioned that family earlier, the anxiety, the depression associated with some of these situations. I'm a social worker, I work very closely with our school social workers. We have a team of growing over 40 school social workers in our district. There are boots on the ground. They're able to meet with these students one-on-one, do check-ins. Hey, I saw you weren't here for a few days. Everything okay? I know you were possibly gonna have to change housing. Just being there to be a trusted adult on campus. And then lastly, how might you all really, step in these situations? So firstly, of course, financially, we're always in need. Our program last year supported about over $70,000 in emergency financial assistance. Let me clarify what that looks like, specifically gas assistance, while families were waiting for buses to get set up, Walmart assistance if they couldn't get to a local food pantry yet, we could maybe meet that gap, as well as vouchers. They could go to the health department, get access to health care, bikes for unaccompanied homeless youth to get to and from their job to where they're staying. So financially, I'm not sure if any of you grabbed the little handout I had on the back. It has some information, as well as, like Dr. Hunter said, about 90% of our schools have food pantries. And while it's like, oh my gosh, back to school, I'm gonna donate, or Thanksgiving's coming up, or Christmas, throughout the whole year, our food pantries are supporting students. I'll give two examples. Bentley Elementary, so here in Sanford, and then Altamont Elementary over on the other side of town, serve at least 70 students every single week on their food pantry. So just sustaining that reach is difficult. So if you or the organization you work with or people you know find it within yourselves to donate food, to donate funds, to keep that, that's directly impacting our students. In addition to that, so pretty much financially donating food, but also donating time. So as you know, our dividend program is what we consider volunteers throughout our district, and there's many programs throughout all of our schools that directly impact our students in the FIN program in homeless situations. I'll speak on a few of them, but just so that way, if you're interested in making that one-on-one connection with a student in one of these situations and really just, like I said, being that trusted adult, one program is the Take Stock in Children program. I'm not sure if any of you all are aware of that. That's a program where you would pair up with a student for all their years of high school. These are many of our FIN students, many economically disadvantaged students, and you are that adult, that source of support to make sure they get from 9th grade to 12th grade. And upon being in the Take Stock in Children program, with you possibly as their mentor, they then get 2 years of college paid for, a scholarship. So not only do they benefit from having a relationship with a trusted adult, helping them navigate scholarships, friendships, drama at school, how to talk to a teacher if you disagree with the grade they gave you, but also they get 2 years of college paid for. So that is a lovely program we're always looking for individuals to take on, as well as At most of our high schools, we have mentorship programs. I know Seminole High School is building a male mentorship program that we're seeking males and even females because we do have the need for that. So I could also give the number for the dividend. It's 407-320-0178, but a simple Google search of SCPS dividends, because of course all of our dividends have to be background checked, fingerprinted and such. So really, financial support, food support, getting involved in our school communities is going to really reach our families.
That's awesome. I'm trying to think how, if there's like a particular, everybody, what am I trying to say? Is there a resource that everyone who attended tonight could go online and get this information so that they could have these resources that were talked about tonight? Is anybody assembling those? Somebody.
She's like, we can't.
Yeah, there's a sheet.
There's a sheet.
Okay, there's a sheet that has these were the people at the tables, right? Mm-hmm. that are listed on the. This is a good start, and this has some of your elected officials on it. Mm-hmm. For resources, but anyhow, it's just something that we might think about. All right, and I'm not sure how to. I tell you what, everybody just start coming to First United Methodist Church Sanford, and we'll keep you.
Every week you'll get updated.
That'd be hard for most of us because we got other churches, but we'll come back to that. Chris, let me throw you a curveball. You have a very broad background, both in industry and in leadership training and in the church and in now a specialty provider agency. Most of us will run into a homeless person or a situation where people are just saying, I don't know what to do. You're kind of the resident expert when it comes to what do we tell them? First of all, when we're talking to somebody like this who just is really struggling, what do we need to keep in mind so that we won't insult them, so that we won't, say the wrong thing? I'm always afraid of saying the wrong thing to people. But also, how can we be actual resources for them?
So that's a great question, and I get this a lot, and I see it. I live in the county. I'm a parent of 3 kids, and a quick note before I answer that, the dividend program is 50 years old this year, and if you're not a dividend, shame on you. It was founded by Dee Dee when she was 1 year old. So I love the dividend. I'm a dividend for my kids. You all should do that on a side note before I forget, and we love Dee Dee. So, and we love Finn. But, a couple of things that are going on. One, I think the most important thing is, for me as a man of faith, and not everybody is, I treat everybody as a child of God. But you treat someone with respect. Look them in the eye. Talk to them as a human being. I also discourage people when I'm speaking. We do have panhandlers in our county, and I discourage anyone from giving money to panhandlers. If you choose to do that, that's great. No, it's not. If you choose to do that, that's your choice. Really, what I do is I keep protein bars in my car. If you're really hungry, I'm going to give you a protein bar. A better use of funds would be able to give them to agencies like ourselves, like the Finn program, or like the Sharing Center, or other agencies that are direct provider support networks for these individuals who are experiencing homelessness. We had at our table something called a Saxon card. Christine has more of these. This is a great resource that has everything in one spot. So you were talking about that, Dr. Hunter. And it's a great resource she's got. And it's got the shelters, it's got opportunities for mental health counseling and what folks need. Our shelter is open 24 hours a day. Folks can come at any time. I have guests that come to us outside of business hours, and it's okay. We'll put them up on a cot. We'll take care of them. I do have 3 barriers to entry, just as a frame of reference. If you have a charge or conviction of murder, charge or conviction of arson, because we have communal living, or charge or conviction of sex offense, especially pedophilia, because I do have many children under the age of 18. So if those are barriers that I just can't overlook because of our program. But I think the most important thing is to really just talk to someone. Listen to them. just need to listen to people as humans and talk to them and find out what's going on. Offer, hey, you want to go grab a meal? Go buy a hamburger, buy you a cup of coffee? Let's go sit down, Jillian, let's talk. How can I come alongside? Just listen to them and hear their stories. A great resource that I brought, are you familiar with this? I'm not. So this is a fantastic book. If you really want to dig deep into, this changed my kind of vocational thought in January when I got a hold of this. It's the book on ending homelessness by Ian DeJong. Some of this you'll disagree with, and some of it you really like, and it's a great book and is very specific on different ways of rethinking when we're working with those who are experiencing homelessness.